and working mostly from Pune, India. So the today agenda will be UiPath Public App overview. Pre-request is create external application, some kind of setups, what we do, setting for external apps, setting data service for external apps, adding external apps to tenant, adding external apps to folder and demo, and then we will talk about query. So mostly UiPath public apps overview. So like when we talk about UiPath, like so far 90% I can say developers or solution architect mostly talk about the backend development, process automations and everything. So UiPath apps is one of the key area where we are talking about the low codes and develop the solution as a front end where you design your UI, UX and everything, and then just publish it and make it accessible either you're in organization or out organization. So when it comes for the out organization where you don't need to log in on the tenant with your user account or password, so it is accessible wherever you are. It doesn't matter whether it should be inside the tenant, right? So that's what it calls public apps, and you can create your public apps and you can just publish it and anybody can go and submit the details. So talk about some of the examples right now in our scenario, like Surya is working so hardly to get the people in house. So when he go for a screening, maybe the job posting and something. So he posted something and he give one kind of URL over there. Okay, you can apply for job post here. So it talks like when we generate a kind of public apps where users can go and fill their information, attach their CV, and then submit the details over there. So the moment they submit it, it comes to us. We get a kind of notification, and based on the business logic, we can do that, and we can save the data, attachments, and everything internally. And that's what we are talking about public apps. So there are a lot of examples for public apps, like kind of CV collections, or maybe you can say HR onboardings, maybe a lot of applications we have right now in the current scenario. So prerequisite is like before creating public apps, you must need to be the kind of tenant admin right, organization admin rights, because if you are not admin, then you will have certain permission need to be like configure one-time permissions on the tenant and then folder just to get the access for the all the like a webhooks, or you can say uh, orchestrators and everything, like adding the data into queues and everything. So you need to be like a kind of admin rights just to start with the prerequisite. Then we'll talk about create external application, how we do. So maybe like last session, we talked about how to create the UiPath apps and what exactly all the features are. So similarly, we have a create external application. So the moment you go into, you can say Cloud Studio, Cloud UiPath, and then you go into apps section. So there are different section you have noticed, like for apps, integration service, data service, orchestrator. So you go to apps, and then in apps you can create new apps if you have a kind of access permissions and everything. So right now you don't need any permission, but going forward, like coming this month, you need some certain permission app creators and all. So then once you have access, you can see these like add create buttons icons. And then when the moment you click on create, it will ask you like what exactly do you want to export, like import the file, or do you want to give some names and make it public. So you can see here we have a checkbox public app. So the moment you click checkbox and then create it, and then just it will open another window where you can just go and design your application, right? And then you can manage from the, you can say if you have any internal application and you think now it should be public, you can go and make it any existing application also public, go to manage access tab, and in manage access tab, you have a kind of checkbox, just make it checkbox and then just publish the application. Then it will be kind of public apps for you, and you can access outside your organization without any user account and password. So now we have a public apps you can access very easy, not a problem, but how you can just go and add the data in data service or add the data into queue And if you are talking about process automation, if you are calling any process, RPA process into asynchronous, unattended process into background, how to do that? Because that is not going to happen, because this application and this configuration just will give you that application will be accessible outside your organization. But how to interact with your certain features like creating queue, creating, calling a process, or adding the data into data service, or calling an integration service and everything, right? So for that one, we have certain operations, certain configuration, which we have to cover. So create external apps. So create apps and design the layout. So that's what I was telling. Develop your business rules, publish it, and then once you publish, then you will have a kind of a URL, and that URL will have a kind of a public in the URL, and that will becomes public. So once apps is created, start with apps like you give to the kind of auth tokens and everything. UiPath apps create UiPath apps. So the moment you create a kind of a public apps, right? So it talks with the UiPath OAuth, right? So for that particular external application, it creates a by default secret ID and key, because how it will access. Because right now, if you are suppose just go and log in into application, then tenant knows, yeah, system knows that you are XYZ and you are accessing the application. But if you are a kind of public app, how system will know who is creating the application and who is doing what? So based on that, the moment you create a public apps, it creates a kind of settings for OAuth apps, external application in the admin panel, and it by default it creates kind of a default app secret ID and value and everything. So this secret ID OAuth authentication will kind of integrate, or maybe it will talk with your external application and internal application like data service, or if you can say process calls and everything. So this one will work internally, just this name will work internally just to call the applications and everything. So setting for external apps, the moment now we need to do some setting just to create some role to access your data. Maybe you can say a storage bucket, or you can say queue or process or anything. So there are two kinds of roles. Maybe you are aware about that, like a tenant level role and then folder level role, right? So if you have a tenant level role, like either in jobs or webhooks, you can just call the process and everything. But if you go on the tenant folder level, in folder level, you have a queue, then folder level, you have you can say storage buckets and everything. So for that one, you need a kind of folder levels roles as well. So for that one, what we are doing, we are creating two roles. One is create tenant role, another is folder role. So for that one, go to particular tenant. And then once you go to the tenant, go to manage access, and then you will see add new role. Then you will see add tenant role, add folder roles. So what you do, create two roles separately. And that's what I'm doing in the next step, setting for external apps. And I'm creating a tenant role here. So now I create a tenant role, give public app. You can change the name based on your like demand. If you want to change something public apps to XYZ, you can do that. Give the kind of meaningful name for that particular roles, and assign the tenant permission to this one. So in this one, in this particular role, what you can do, you need only one, that is webhooks. You can say view and create permission. The next one we have a kind of this is same application where we have tenant roles, public app, and then I'm just assigning the permission where view and then create for the webhook. Next one is folder level role. So create a folder level role. So in the folder level, what could be for apps? So in the folder level, there are many things. Like if you talk about the folder level, you have assets, storage files, so many things, but we don't need everything because we are not calling assets, connections, environments inside the apps. So what we need inside apps, we need a storage buckets, because we are talking with a storage bucket. Either we are talking with jobs, so we are talking with queue. So what we are doing, we are giving some certain permission on the folder level. So what I do, I have created a public apps unattended jobs. So give some meaningful name. So later tomorrow, if you open your apps, maybe open your tenant, you can identify what exactly this role means, right? So then you go there and assign the folder permission. And then in the folder permission, you have a storage file and a storage buckets. Because sometimes if you are trying to get the files from your storage bucket, then you need a permission for the storage files or saving the files into a storage bucket. So that's what we are trying to give a storage files as a view and create, and a storage bucket as a view permission. And then we have jobs, like when we are adding any jobs, triggering any jobs through process or maybe anything. And then we have create like a cube, and then we have transaction. So we have cube and then we have transaction. So for cube, we are adding a transaction. So we need a view access on cube and transaction access, create access on the create access, right? So similarly, setting for external apps, and this is like a more, you can say, I have just put it into more generic. For process, you need tenant role and folder roles. In tenant roles, you need webhook view and create, and folder roles, you need jobs create. For storage buckets, folder roles, you need the storage file view and create, and folder roles, storage buckets view. For cube, you need like a folder roles view and then folder roles transactions like create. So that these all like 6 permission you need for external application, and then you can do certain operation. You can write the rules like call process, add item into queue, or add item into storage bucket. And then next will be like data service, right? Because now you are adding data into data service. So you need some certain operation, certain permission on that as well, because you don't want to expose all the data outside, or you don't want to kind of give permission on certain operation like deletes or anything on that, you can say data service. So what you do, create a new role for data service as well. So when using an entity for public apps, make sure you provide only the relevant permission, not all permission or everyone permission, because if you just put everyone, it will be very generic, and then your data security will be like kind of not protected, I can say. So just try to give only certain permission, and then you can manage on what entity you need what permission for that particular external applications, right? So only grant view and edit permission of on an entity if you are comfortable with all users that are having access all data in that entity. So like in entity there, in the data service, there could be a number of entities. So there is no need to go and give all the permission on all the entities. So what you do, create a new role and assign that role particular to that entity, right? So let's see how it works. So what I'm trying to do, like create a role, public apps. Here again, I'm creating a new roles into data service. So how do you do? Like go to data service, you need some certain permission. That's what I said, you need a admin right. And then go to manage access. How do you do? Go to this 3 dot data service, you have manage access, right? And then the moment you click on manage access, then it will, you can go and create a roles, and then in the roles you can give public roles, and then add entity, whichever entity requires, right? You don't need to give all the entity and everything. So here I have selected job application, one of the example I'm going to demonstrate today. So one application, one entity which I have created job application, and then I have given read and create permission, because right now I'm not letting users to edit also. So just read and create, that's it. So once we created this particular roles, then we have to assign that roles, right? Now, where we have to assign that roles, we have to assign that role to particular apps, which apps like we have created. So now we have created one apps, add names here, roles, right? Assign the roles, add names, and then it will comes here. So this is coming from where? This is coming from the, you remember where we have OAuth authentication tokens and everything, because our system doesn't know who are you. So that the moment we create an external application, it will create a OAuth tokens, key and everything, and that's how it will talk and communicate. So that's what we have given that users. I can say this is kind of users, right? For external application. So we have added the names of that particular apps, and then we have assigned the select the roles. So we have certain roles, and whatever your custom roles is there, you just assign the permission to public apps, and then you will have certain operations access on that particular entity. Now adding external apps to tenant, which I said you, like now you have created your roles, Now you have created your folder roles. Now you have created your data service roles and everything. So similarly, you need to go into your external application and tenant. And in tenant, what you need to do, you need to search for external apps. So here we have again that particular external authentication and everything, which we are creating while we are creating our public apps. So you have to search for that, and it always start with UiPath dash like kind of app. So just enter UiPath apps. It will list it out if you have more than ones, right? And then you have to select roles is equal to public app. And then you will have for that particular, you can say apps will have access on the tenant to create or call the process, right? Similarly, adding external apps to folders. So same things, we are here, we are calling that particular authentication, you can say, and then we are adding the account, and then we are giving public apps unattended jobs on that particular folder. So this folder will have also access for that particular external application. Now, so now we know how to create the application. Now we know how to create the roles for external application on, you can say tenant, and then folder, and then data service assigning, and how the OAuth authentication create an account, maybe like you a unique identification for that particular external application, and then assigning that into tenant and folders and then to data service. So far, do you have any query, and do you have anything do you want to talk, or shall we move into job application and then we can talk? Okay, cool. So I will move into job application apps and I will show you, and then we'll talk about. So now for this demo, I have created one job application apps, which is kind of a public facing. So I will just send you the URL, anyone can access it and you can see how it works, right? So right now it is sitting inside Ashling. I have created for Ashling. So like suppose we have a job application and we want people to go and apply for this job. So what we will do, we can go and put this URL on LinkedIn, or we can say, if you are interested, please go and submit your CV. So people will go and see, they just enter their information, basic information like first name, last name, email, or then maybe some interview date, when they want to process, and then upload their CV. I have added some other document if they have some kind of visa, passports, XYZ, right? Then just attach it and then just click on apply. The moment it click on apply, it comes to our tenant, send an email, then you can add an item, add a record into data service, then start a process, queues and everything, and then add into storage buckets and everything should touch, right? So let me go and show you kind of this one. So this is the application. So just try with this. I think everyone should be able to access it. So let me tell you like how it works. Like I have created a kind of application here, and if I go and just edit this, so it's just an item, and then we have a queue here, low code, then we have entity job application, we have orchestrator, like job application, emails and everything. And then we have simply like a simple application. So what we are doing, we are just doing some validation and passing the validation. And then on apply, what we are doing, we are calling here the rules, certain rules. And then in rules, it is nothing, just a spinner, and then we are creating kind of entity records, job application. And then once it's submitted, created the particular data service, then we are adding an item to queue, like that item to queue. And once queue has been added, then we are just going and calling the process, like this process. And then we are processing in the process, we are just calling in emails and everything. And then, yeah, that's it. And then once this is completed, we are just calling the confirmation page. And I think That's it, nothing big. So let me go and launch this again, once again. So if you guys tried, you can also submit it. Let me show. I will put first name India, last name Romania, then India @asking.com. I can say I'll be a developer. Earliest possible start date, I can say 2 month notice period, something. Then preferred interview date next week, time 10 a.m. Developer demo. I can go here and I attach some kind of file. Right now I'm just attaching, maybe you can just attach some other file. UiPath UX, okay. And then we can attach other documents also. And the moment I go and click here, live. So now it is going and trying to submit the records. So now let me go back to data service. So the moment I go to data service, I can go to job application, I can go to data, and I can see here the latest data has been captured here. So this is one things we captured. But I don't, just a second. Then now just a second. So now I go to this particular folder for low code, and if I go to Cube, so in Cube, if I go here, low code, and if I see the transaction, view transaction, I can see this one has newly added. And if I go and see the details, India@partners.com, so which I try to add a cube here. Then similarly, if I go to this storage bucket, then in a storage bucket, if I go to this particular low code, you can see this one like UI apps, this one which I added right now. So you can see all the documents here. Yeah, so that this demonstration is like mostly like talking about configuration, making application outside, and then how it was integration with the all the components of the, you can say, RPA process. And then I'm just calling a web studio. Like I don't want to call RPA process into backend because that will be heavy lifting for me. So I just created a kind of a studio, we have a studio process serverless, you can say process automation. So I just created an email kind of thing. So it is just a problem on that. Let's go. Try once again. Yep. So basically this one is triggering through the process, which I have shown you. And then I have created one asset, and through the asset, it is just calling the asset value. And then I'm trying to I'm just going into a storage bucket and trying to download the resumes by name. And then so once we have downloaded the resumes, what I'm trying to do, I'm just trying to send the email to the HR team. Okay, this is HR team and this is automated HR. So we got a resume, please go and look into that. So this is kind of overall automation end to end, I can say. Yeah. And then like once this is done, we have something